Madam Chair, we're set to go. Thank you for your patience.
All right. Courtney, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. This evening is our monthly meeting of the Board of Adjustment. While we are having to change how we operate, we are still committed to a transparent process and encouragement of public comment during our meetings. We will be accepting public comments based on using the hand raise feature. You can raise your hand at any time and we will recognize you as we get to the public participation portion of the agenda for each case. Director of Planning Joe Vunich will be moderating the Zoom meeting and will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak, again, as hands are raised. I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Deborah Coleman, board member, Arnie Sprunger, board member, Bob Morris, board member, Jared Frank, vice chair, and myself, Mary Giles, chair. The Department of Planning staff present is Joe Vunich, director of planning, Robin Keith, planner, and Kristen Parker, administrative assistant. City Attorney John Young and court reporter Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, July 15th, 2021, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This hearing is informal in its nature. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or his or her representative will be asked to state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, and make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance and the hardship necessitating it. The board will only consider the nature and condition of the property and whether these factors mandate a variance in order to allow for its full utilization. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there is anyone present online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the request. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then state their comments. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing prior to a call for the vote in order to bring in additional documentation or information. The board may also request a continuance to gather additional information or for a further visit to the site. After the conclusion of input from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating online. Additionally, any other information not presented in the previous testimony but pertinent to the request will be noted at this time. Once all speakers have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions. Then the board will vote. At that time, the discussion relating to the petition is concluded and no further input will be permitted. The board will generally make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the petition for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Mr. Vunich, are there any other questions at this time?
Madam Chair, with your permission, those that are in attendance, if you have a question regarding the process associated with the Board of Adjustment, please raise your hand or enter something in chat and I'll promote you so you can ask your question. Madam Chair, if we could just have a moment.
Sure.
Madam Chair, may I respectfully ask that my name as the city administrator be entered into the record as in attendance in this meeting, if I may?
Absolutely. Mr. Steve Cross, the city administrator, is also present at the meeting today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course.
Madam Chair, during that period, no one raised their hand or provided any item in the chat feature. So I think we're ready to read the first request into the record.
All right. Since there are no questions, the board will proceed. Please read the first request into the record, which will be followed by initial comments by the Department of Planning and a brief slide presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, the first case tonight is BA 0921 Patrick Tuith, 251 Cherry Hills Meadows Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63040. Requests an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a sport court upon the property located at 251 Cherry Hills Meadows Drive, locator number 24V340628, lot 32 of the Meadows of Cherry Hills subdivision, which would thereby authorize a rear yard setback distance of 10 feet in lieu of the required 30 feet. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415-140 R3 10,000 square foot residence district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance and St. Louis County Planned Environment Unit, PEU, ordinance 16,676 from 1993. This request is in Ward 8. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before the department provides the slide presentation, with your permission, it would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any other items that are offered as testimony at tonight's public hearing, including any exhibits, plats, or other information. And Madam Chair, with your permission, we can do a share screen, and then the department will narrate a very brief slide presentation.
Please, thank you.
Madam Chair, some of these will look familiar to the board members, as is noted in the department's report. This particular matter was presented at the June 2021 meeting of the Board of Adjustment and postponed to obtain further information. The first slide is an aerial photograph of the general area around the petition site. As you can see, there's a turquoise rectangle that kind of shows up in the middle of the aerial photograph. That is the subject site. Around it is the 7 villages of Cherry Hills and the enclaves at Cherry Hills and the meadows of Cherry Hills, a number of other residential subdivisions. Thank you. The next slide is an aerial photograph of the subject property at a closer scale. And as you can see, the rectangle is the lot itself, and on the lot is a single family dwelling. The next slide is a photograph of the subject property, the lot, and the ranch home that is located upon it. And this is looking from the adjoining public street to the west. This is a view of the property again from the public street, more in a southwest view. And again, you can see the adjoining residence to the south. And this is again a view from the public right-of-way. This is looking to the west. This is the common boundary line between the subject property and the dwelling and property to the south. And then the next couple of slides, we just kind of walk up closer to the west and nearer to the dwelling. And here you can see the common boundary line with some fencing, and then in the background, a patio area and a basketball hoop. And then again, just a closer view of that same location. I would note that the petitioner has installed evergreen type plantings along that common boundary, as is proposed to the north. Again, this is the adjoining property to the south. Again, a single-family dwelling on a lot. And this is that common boundary line between that single-family dwelling to the south and the petition property. As we go to the west along that common boundary line, this is a view in between the two dwellings, looking again to the west-southwest. And this is a view across the petitioner's rear yard area looking south. And again, another view of the rear yard area where the proposed outdoor game court is to be located. And this is looking more toward the south-southeast. This is standing in this particular slide is standing in the rear yard area, looking between the two single-family dwellings. And now we're looking more toward the east. And then just a close-up of the other accessory structures and improvements in the rear yard area. And then this is the common area to the back. These are lots that are part of the 7 villages of Cherry Hills. They're very deep in depth, and so they almost appear to be common ground instead of private lots. This is a view of the street in front of Petitioner's property. This is looking toward the north. And this is the same street now looking toward the south. This is an image of the proposed game court, which is being requested to be constructed in the rear yard area. And this is new information for the purposes of tonight's meeting. The contractor for the outdoor game court has provided an engineered drawing with notes indicating how they intend to manage stormwater from the outdoor game court, which is impervious, and direct it to the east and the public right-of-way area. So this is new and comes after the June meeting and the request for additional information. Here's a colorized version that was prepared. It reflects not only the existing single-family dwelling and the game court, but shows its proposed landscaping. And then this is a rendering that was provided by the petitioner. And this is that common boundary line between the adjoining single-family dwelling to the north and the petition site. And the intent is to provide an evergreen screen that's non-seasonal in nature, so it will continually provide screening. And this is new as well. And the last slide of the presentation is where we receive favorable comments or comments in opposition. And the petition side is the pink star, and then the comments we received that were favorable are shown by the green circles. Madam Chair, if there are any questions or comments, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vunich. If there aren't any questions from the board for Mr. Vunich, can the petitioner please state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Hello, my name is Patrick Tuith. Address is 251 Cherry Hills Meadows Drive in Wildwood.
And what's your relation to the property?
Sorry, owner of the property.
All right, can you be sworn in by our court reporter?
Yep.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you please state or explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of your property?
Sure. So with regards to this court that we're installing, basically requesting a variance 10 feet off of the back border. So we're still going to be 10 feet away from the rear border of the property. We're requesting the variance due to the fact that, as you saw in the picture, it's a half court setting. It's not even a half court. So the only way we could get I guess, enough surface area for my 9-year-old to be able to have at least, a part of a 3-point line, was to be able to get this variance approved. So with that being said, our 9-year-old very active in basketball. He's becoming a little stud, and we'd like to, help him navigate and have the right resources to be able to continue to practice his game. As Joe mentioned, the area that court is proposed to go in is almost a common ground type of setting. It's rarely used other than by myself and Jack and my wife when we play ball and whatnot. So it's an area that's little used. And as you saw with the amount of approval that we had from their neighbors, people are happy for us, and they're excited that we're going to be able to have a nice little recreational area. It's a high-end sport court. It's not just a slab of concrete. So, but to answer your question directly, the variance is requested so that we have just kind of a minimum area for him to be able to play basketball.
All right. Do any board members have any questions for the petitioner? Okay. Are there any speakers in the audience who want to speak in favor of or opposition to the request?
Madam Chair, if you just give me a second to see if anyone raises their hand, or if you would like to speak and do not know the raise hand feature, if you could type something into the chat feature, I'll be glad to promote you and you can speak on this particular matter. Thank you. Madam Chair, I see no one with the raise hand feature, nor have I received a chat, so thank you.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. No request for that. Does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, I do want to thank the petitioner for providing additional information. As noted in the slide presentation, there is that engineered drawing relative to stormwater management, and then the rendering that depicts the intended plantings. I do want to note that the Assistant City Engineer for Wildwood, Dan Ron, did do an analysis of that stormwater management plan, and as noted in the report, believes that a variation to it, if followed, could address the stormwater concerns that the Department of Planning identified. The department unfortunately still does not support the request due to the fact that it still has stormwater concerns, and certainly I can go into detail why the department continues to have those. And then secondly, just from the standpoint of the size of the lot relative to the size of the outdoor game court. But again, I do want to note that additional information was provided as requested by the Board of Adjustment and the Department of Planning, and the department is very appreciative for that information. Madam Chair, if there are any questions of the board members, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Director Administrator. Are there any questions or final comments from the board?
Yeah, I actually do have some questions. Is the primary concern with stormwater runoff, is that the main issue here, Joe?
It is a primary issue, Mr. Sprunger, and with the hospitality of the petitioner, his wife and him, Dan, Ron, Robin, Keefe, and I were able to visit the property. And we also had the opportunity to meet with the adjoining neighbor to the north. And the circumstances were explained about the problem that neighbor has to the north relative to runoff at this time. And certainly, as I say, we discussed a lot of options out there and concerns, and the plan was submitted. And our assistant city engineer has devised a different approach, one that he believes will address it. But in the past, we continue to think we have solutions and problems arise. And from that perspective, the department is just being overcautious.
that creates kind of a tough situation because, you know, if the primary concern, and it's a legitimate concern about water runoff, you know, if that could be addressed, then, you know, does that change things? I mean, would the department then be more favorable to the request? Because it seems like the neighbors are supportive of it because of where it physically would sit. You know, there's tree line in the back, and they're going to put up, you know, trees along the side. You know, so visually, it seems like there's an effort to be sensitive to that issue, which I applaud. You know, you know, Patrick, for that. But is there a good answer, an answer that you think, you know, would take care of the stormwater runoff?
Well, according to our Department of Public Works, they believe that what is described as a gutter drain of a certain size and depth with appropriate material should manage a certain type of storm. And that storm, based on the calculations, is a 2-year, 15-minute duration. And certainly, I am appreciative of the Department of Public Works and their efforts, but oftentimes our storms don't fit that particular type. And then we have storms that are much more onerous and of high intensity and longer duration. And so, as I say, I'm just trying to be cautious. The Department of Public Works has given an option to the Board of Adjustment and the petitioner that would, in some instances, be sufficient to address the concerns of stormwater management. But again, I just feel that it's for a certain type of storm and not a range of storms. And if we were to go to a longer duration, higher intensity storm event, that trench would become much more larger and in terms of width and depth. So again, just from the perspective of the department, that much impervious surface in a constricted area is just a concern.
Sure. No, it's very legitimate. We appreciate the fact that you think about that. I wonder if, you know, if you have a really big storm that is beyond what you know, the Public Works Department modeled this on. I mean, even without a sport court, are you still going to have runoff issues if you have that big of a storm?
Certainly, there are other locations in the meadows of Cherry Hills where a typical storm or a atypical storm creates major issues for certain property owners. So yes, what we're seeing in terms of a precipitation pattern kind of defies much of our calculations for the range of storms, whether it be the 2-year, 15-minute up to the 100-year.
Yeah. I just wonder if in kind of an ironic way, maybe it's even better, you know, there's an improvement there because there's a more substantial French drain or whatever they called that, you know, to catch that water runoff. You know, without that, then the water just going to run off the property anyway. And so it makes me curious as to whether or not it's a better situation or a worse situation from the stormwater perspective. Anyway, I was just trying to get my head wrapped around that.
That's a thoughtful question, and I wish I had a better explanation.
Yeah.
If I could say something, you know, we've been here for 11 years and the water, it just goes to nowhere. Our neighbor who Joe came out and spoke with, he's apparently having issues with his foundation with the water. So we have 4 gutter downspouts that go to a PVC that goes to a catch basin that goes to nowhere. I mean, it's just a pit where mosquitoes hang out. The area is always soft. You know, we're kind of on the top of the hill. And the next house down, I mean, he's got just completely soft backyard. So exactly what we thought about right off the bat was, you know, let's eradicate this problem first and foremost and put up a basketball court. I don't think there's any question that this would be a vast improvement. And I know Austin's on the call, might have something that he might care to share as well. But I'm just amazed that, based on, it probably wasn't the prettiest of drawings and such, but I mean, everything that you see, if you just come walk back here anytime after it rains, it's an absolute mess back there. And with the design and the PVC of everything going towards the front of the property, we've got a nice big slope right towards the front of the property. It'll go right out into, into the sidewalk in the street. And there's a nice little area there. It's rarely used. I just, with a pop-up drain right there, it'll be significantly better. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents.
Patrick, are you aware of what the Department of Public Works recommended as an alternative drain system?
Not yet.
Okay, so you weren't made aware of that. I wanted to ask you whether you would feel comfortable with that approach versus what you had submitted. But you obviously can't comment on that because you don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, we're open. I mean, we're open to anything. So yeah.
And Madam Chair and members of the board, I misquoted the storm event. It's a 15-year, 20-minute type. So my apology.
In your 20 minutes.
Which is a larger storm. So I want to correct myself. Thank you.
So the Department of Planning, the Department of Public Works, their recommendation in theory would accommodate a slightly bigger storm than what originally we were thinking about.
Yes, sir. I had referenced a shorter storm, a different storm event. And so checking the calculations from Dan Ron, our assistant city engineer, it's a 15-year, 20-minute type. And I would note that, Madam Chair, there is a raised hand.
Austin?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. You have
Please,
a,
Okay.
Austin, can you please state your name and address and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
My name is Austin Helfers, address 343 Great Oaks Drive, Labadie, Missouri, 63055. I'm the owner of Sport Court St. Louis.
All
Do
right,
you-
Austin. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead, Austin.
Okay. So, Joe, back to what you're saying about the 20-minute, 15-year storm event. So that's basically the guidelines we have to follow when adding any impervious surface in Creve Coeur, Town and Country, Ladue, Kirkwood, Huntley, Clayton, any of these cities. This is what they're doing. Obviously, Wildwood doesn't have anything set in place that I know of. So we were just trying to be proactive here and pipe that water to the street as the abutting neighbor had foundation problems. So that was the thought process behind the channel drain, as opposed to the catch basin and slowly letting it dissipate into the soil as the Department of Public Works engineer recommended. But I did read the memo that said you're concerned about the sidewalk being slippery and water discharging on the sidewalk. So I get that point too. I guess I don't know which one's better. Obviously the Department of Public Works wants the catch basin there slowly dissipate into the yard. Maybe it's a combination of the two that would work, that would make everybody happy. I'm just not sure, And and obviously we have engineers we can get involved, but the time frame between when we met and when we had this meeting was a little tight. So did the best we could with the time frame we had.
And Madam Chair, I'll acknowledge that we met late in June and then we're meeting early in July. So we had a holiday in there. So I think everybody was scrambling. But
Sure.
as Mr. Helfers mentioned, I think we all did the best we could to get the information to the board by tonight's meeting.
Excuse me. Is there more information that needs to be put together and presented? Is this something that would warrant a postponement?
Certainly I can't speak for the petitioner, but we did send a copy of the report via email to the petitioner. That's been double checked by Ms. Keeve. And I'm sorry if it came late. It came today, obviously, because we received Mr. Helfer's engineered report. I gave it to the Department of Public Works. They worked on it all day yesterday. And we sent out the report early this morning. So from that perspective, not everybody's had a lot of time to review it, but again, if the petitioner would like a postponement, he can request it. If the board would like a postponement, they can request it. At this stage, the department is still not supportive of the request, and the rationales or the findings of fact are detailed in its report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunich. Are there any other comments or requests from the petitioner or any members of the board?
So, Mary, if I might, I'm trying to, if we were to approve this, how would that approval look? Because it sounds like the petitioner as well as the contractor are taking the stormwater management pretty serious, and there's going to be some plan to do something. What would that approval look? Subject to or a conditional? How would we? I'm just trying to think how that approval would look. If anybody, Joe, if you would have an opinion on that.
With the permission of the chair, if there is a favorable action on the board's part, the department would respectfully request that the issuance of any permit be conditioned on a stormwater management plan approved by the Department of Public Works.
Mr. Tuith, that would be satisfactory to you as well? You would be on board for that?
Just so I understand correctly, so if we have a majority of members in favor, is that the question? Would I be supportive of that? Yes, I would be.
In support of it, in working and agreeing to work with the Department of what was it? What department?
Public Works.
Public Works, to work with them to devise the best possible solution, reasonable to what resources you have access to.
Absolutely. We're all in. I mean, we're trying to be good neighbors to everybody involved. We've reached out to every neighbor that even touches the property to make them aware back in March. So we've been very open and honest, and we want to be great neighbors. We want to be great citizens of Wildwood. We're happy to work with them to make this a reality. Thank you.
And I imagine you're ready to kind of get this thing moving, right?
We are. Been a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other comments from the board or from the petitioner or Mr. Helfers? All right. At this time, I'm going to close the proceeding for a vote. And can I get a?
We have a hand raised. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Chair.
Sorry, you guys hear me?
Oh, Austin, yes, go ahead.
So Patrick, I know you probably haven't had a chance to read it, but just so you understand, instead of piping all the storm water to the front of the street like we talked about, the department is proposing, basically we dig a trench 2 feet by 2 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet long, the width of the court to your adjoining neighbor with the foundation issues. Then basically line that with fabric, fill it with rock, and have an overflow built into it. It's just different than what we had looked at, but that's what the department wants. We're more than happy to accommodate that and build it that way.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification, Austin. I wasn't aware, but yeah, that sounds great. If you're confident in it, I'm confident in it. So thank you.
I mean, I'm not an engineer, but if you could even have your overflow potentially, you know, discharge the way that you had originally planned. I mean, this is really up to the Department of Public Works, but you might be able to incorporate those two concepts together to maybe even be doubly sure that you manage the stormwater properly. But again, that's up to the Department of Public Works and people who know more about this than I do. So.
All right, if there are no other comments at this time, I'd like to close the proceeding for a vote and ask for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with condition.
I'd like to motion to approve the variance subject to the petitioner working with the Public Works regarding the wastewater management or stormwater management.
All right, we have a motion to approve from Mr. Frank, subject to the petitioner working with Public Works concerning the drainage issues. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Springer. We have a second.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Frank, how do you vote?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would ask the maker and the second of the motion to consider a revision.
Yeah,
Working with the Department of Public Works may not mean obtaining a water management plan from the Department of Public Works. I mean, they could submit something, we could reject it, and they could claim they've worked with the department. So I think it needs to
Right.
be a little stronger, please.
Sure.
Hey, Joe, you or Mr. Munich, you cut out a little bit. Can you say that first part again, what you would like to see?
Yes. If the board is favorable toward the variance, the department will respectfully request it be conditioned on the submittal of a stormwater management plan to be reviewed and acted upon by the Department of Public Works.
right. Basically, we want the Department of Public Works to approve the stormwater plan.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
not just work with, but have a plan that's approved. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Frank, do you want to revise your motion?
Please.
Okay, go ahead.
So it would be approved with the condition that the petitioner work with the Department of Public Works to submit a stormwater plan, and it had to be approved by the department prior to constructing this.
Okay, we have a first, or a motion to approve, subject to the Public Works approving the drain issue or the wastewater plan. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
Yes, to approve.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, subject to the condition previously stated. Congratulations, your variance has been conditionally approved.
Thank you all. You guys are great to work with. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Can the next petition be read into the record by the Department of Planning?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, our next case is BA 1221, Randy and Mary Beckendorf, 2057 Wild Horse Creek Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. They request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of authorizing the retention of a ground-mounted solar panel system at 2057 Wild Horse Creek Road. locator number 23X530105, Section 4, Township 44, Range 3, being located north of Lehman Acres Lot A, within the front yard setback area at a distance of 23 feet in lieu of the 50-foot standard, as well as retaining roof solar panels, which are situated on the existing dwelling visible from the abutting roadway and also encroaching into the same building line location. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. And this is in Ward 1. Thank you.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Ms.
with
Keefe.
your- Pardon me.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, with your permission, the Department of Planning would like to enter into the record regarding this particular request the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Zoning Ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any other testimony that is provided as part of tonight's public hearing regarding the request, which could include any plats, exhibits, photographs, and other items. Madam Chair, with your permission, we could share screen and do a brief slide presentation of the subject site.
Please.
And thanks to Ms. Keefe. The first slide that's provided for the benefit of the board is the overall area with the subject site. The square that's shown in the turquoise is the subject site. And as you can see, different here, the development pattern is primarily rural, large lot, 3-acre density with single-family dwellings. This particular slide represents the subject site. It is on Wild Horse Creek Road. And again, the site is 3 acres in size and heavily wooded. In this particular slide, it's the same aerial photograph, but now has the topography, the topographic lines added to it. So as you can see, the area that is heavily wooded is also steeply sloping. This is a view of the property and dwelling from Wild Horse Creek Road. This is looking in a westerly direction. In this particular slide, you can see the roof mounted panels on the garage. Again, from Wild Horse Creek Road, looking to the west primarily. And again, the garage is shown as the primary focus of the slide. And again, on top of the garage are the roof mounted panels. Moving to the south, the ground mounted panels are to the side of the garage, and they're visible from Wild Horse Creek Road where the slide was taken. Just another view of the ground mounted panels, now looking more in a southwesterly direction. And then a view from Wild Horse Creek Road that kind of identifies both the ground mounted and the roof mounted panel system. This slide gives you an image of the area to the west of the panels. And this is the side yard area of the petition property. And again, another view from Wild Horse Creek Road, now looking in the side yard area on the north end of the property, so to speak. This is the property that is directly across from the petition site on Wild Horse Creek Road and to looking in an easterly direction. This is a view of Wild Horse Creek Road. and a view of Wild Horse Creek Road now to the south. The other was to the north. This is the schematic of the solar panel design. The items identified as D, E, and F are the ground-mounted panels. The items identified as A, B, and C are the roof-mounted types. The panels on the roof of the garage that are facing more toward the west are not visible from the street, Wild Horse Creek Road, and are not a subject of this request. This is a site plan that shows the relationship of the ground-mounted panels and the roof-mounted panels. And as you can see, the roof-mounted panels are on the dwelling, and the dwelling does extend into the front yard setback, but has a variance. And then the ground-mounted panels also extend into the front yard setback. The department advertised the distance at 23 feet in lieu of 50 feet. The schematic shows 26 feet. Again, the department did check the dimensions and it still gets 23 feet. The good news is we advertised it for more, not less, so we can proceed forward. And once a decision is made, we can certainly make sure we get the dimension correct. Again, here is the aerial photograph that shows the comments that were received from surrounding property owners. The subject side is the pink star. Those comments received that were favorable are the green circles, and those that were opposed are represented by the red X. Thank you, Madam Chair. And if there are any questions regarding any of the slides, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Director Munich. Are there any questions from the board for Director Munich? All right, at this time, I'd like to call the petitioner forward and ask you to state your name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter. Mr. Heber, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
I apologize. My name's John Heberer. I'm friends of Randy and Mary, have been for a long time. Also the solar installer, imagine that. So Randy and Mary are on a bucket list trip to Alaska, and he asked me to take care of this for him. So I'm gonna do the best I can do.
All right. Can you state your address, please?
My address is 8 Horseman Court, Foley, Missouri.
All right. And could you be sworn in by the court reporter?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Heber, am I saying that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Heber, can you please explain the nature of the request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of the property?
So I first want to apologize to the city of Wildwood. I've been an electrical contractor for 26 years, 36 years, actually. I apologize. I'm older than 26, but 36 years. Dealt with the city of Wildwood, never had to physically pull a permit. I'm actually the installer for Solus Energy Services. They handled the permitting process. If I'd have known then what I know now, we'd have done it the right way. So I want to apologize for that. My name and my company is means a lot to me as far as reputation. So, and now being involved with a good friend of mine, Randy, I want to try to get this right for him, being the installer, and obviously the link to him buying the system. Randy sent an email to Travis Newberry, I believe his name is. And Randy said that the ground mount is 44 feet from the setback. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. The panels on the roof, they have what we call a white on black. or a black on white. The panel itself's black and the trim is white or silver. That can be changed out to accommodate the cosmetic issues from the road. And we can make that whole array black on the roof that's visible to the road. In the first meeting, this is actually our third meeting, Randy actually had some pretty serious medical conditions the very day of our last meeting, so it was postponed. I don't know if y'all remember that or not. But so it got postponed. Now he's in Alaska, God love him. But anyway, in the first meeting, it seemed the majority of the board members, I don't know if any of you were involved in it or not, were happy with maybe trying to do a grass line like that tall pampas grass to hide that ground mount array from the visibility from Wild Horse Creek Road. We'd be more than happy to do that. I don't know what else to do. I want to get this guy hooked up. Obviously, he's not only my friend, but a customer as well. So I'm willing to do anything that you ask me to do and get this all behind us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Heber. Are there any questions from the board for the petitioner?
Yeah, Mr. Huber, would there be a configuration that you could design that would not require getting into the setback?
Not with the timber situation that it is now. The way the sales team designs these systems is all through a sunlight software that picks up optimal energy, green energy, and picks up the optimal amount of sunshine during the day and throughout the year. Obviously, the orbit of the sun changes, so we set it up to be at maximum usage and potential for the client. So it would be very difficult. And with the roof lines on Randy's house, the only way to really utilize and get a full offset of his electric bill involved a ground mount array.
So what portion of the total system does the ground mounted portion represent?
It's about half of it.
About half of it? Okay.
Sir.
So the ground component of it's not required. It wouldn't be required for the system. You could put in just the roof mounted one. It's just that he wouldn't have as much power generation capability. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, sir. He requested a full offset. And honestly, I did 70, 80 installs across Missouri and Illinois last year. Getting pretty involved down in the state of Texas as we speak. Ground mounts are more effective as far as ROI because we can situate that ground mount to pick up optimum sunlight. So
Are there any other questions for the petitioner? Are there any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor of or opposition to the request?
Madam Chair, there is a gentleman that would like to speak, so I'm going to promote him to a panel.
All right.
Mr.
Hello, my
Little?
name is Brian Little.
Mr. Little, can you please state your name and address and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Yes, my name is Brian Little. The address is 2616 Headland Drive, St. Charles, Missouri.
Okay, go ahead.
In regards to, I actually designed this system. I work for Solis Energy. And some of the questions were
Madam Chair, he needs to be sworn in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Little, if you could be sworn in by the court reporter.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I believe one of the previous questions before was about the situation of the panels in relation to the size of the system. It is about 50% of his power demand that is associated with that ground mount. And if there's any other questions about the design of the system, I'm here to help.
Can I not get my?
All right, thank you, Mr. Little. Are there any other, any questions from the board for Mr. Little?
Yeah, just to be clear, Mr. Little, there is no other location on the property that would accommodate the ground mount and staying out of setbacks. Is that correct?
Not without removing a tremendous amount of trees.
Oh,
So you could do it, but you'd have to clear a bunch of trees. Yeah, okay.
A significant amount, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I don't see my hand.
Ms. Coleman, go ahead.
That was something I was going to touch on. So the only other option is to remove some trees. This is a 3-acre heavily wooded lot. So how many feet of trees are you looking at to remove if that were the only option?
Well, we'd have to redo the calculation, but based on what I remember, at least 30 feet into the woods and whatever the distance of the ground array is.
And then the width as well, so
That is
that the trees were not in the shade?
Yeah, and that width would actually fan out because of the array of the sun, so.
Uh-huh.
It would
Okay.
probably, it would be well into 100 trees probably.
Ooh. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner? Go ahead, Mr. Morris.
What would be the purpose of the pampas grass that you suggested? Just to hide it?
Yes, sir. They mentioned that in our first meeting, just to hide or shield that ground mount array, which would not affect the sun on our panels. It wouldn't affect the pickup of the sun on our panels, but it would camouflage those panels from the street. Or it doesn't have to be pampas grass, whatever you all choose for us to do. We're more than happy to do it. Honestly, I didn't know nothing about solar until a year and a half ago, and I got thrown into the middle of it right about COVID time, and it's been a very lucrative business for me, and it's helped me out as far as construction work going downhill during that time. And it's a new interest to me. It's a very good. I'm putting it in my backyard. I got a ground mount going in my backyard. I'm putting it on my office in O'Fallon. And it's just pretty amazing. And I push it to everybody. And I think it would be a good thing for Wildwood. Obviously, we'll do it the right way the first time on my end or our end, Liberty Electric and Solis Energy Services. But it really is it's an up and coming thing, and it's something new. And I think it'll be beneficial in the future for sure.
I have a question for Mr. Gooney. Would that solve any kind of a problem just so you couldn't see it? I mean, is that one of the big issues, that it's visible and people are objecting to it?
Mr. Morris, obviously the ground mounted system as installed is highly visible from Wild Horse Creek Road. And the first meeting, the petitioner's representative is mentioning, that was actually at the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on the request. The Planning and Zoning Commission members suggested that if the ground mounted system were to stay, some screening along the edge of it and between the road might be acceptable. Ultimately, the Planning and Zoning Commission postponed any action on the conditional use permit request to first see if the variance would be granted or not. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions for the petitioners or for Director Vunich?
I had a question. So on the recommendation report, Ms. Vunich, it says, Director Vunich, it says regarding the roof mounted system, an issue with the color. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. In the non-urban resident district and also in all our resident districts, there are specific requirements for solar panel systems. And one of those requirements is that the panels themselves and all framing match the color of the roof as closely as possible, or not contrast, as this particular set does, the silver framing and the black solar panels. So the department is supportive of the roof mounted panel system because it's not encroaching any closer to the road than obviously the dwelling itself. And if the color of the framing was changed out, we think the impact would be minimal.
That's very easily done on my end. I can do black on black up there pretty quick and have it done in a day. So I don't have any problem doing that.
All right, are there any other questions from the board?
So just to be clear, Joe, was the main concern just the visibility from Wild Horse Creek? Was that the main concern?
From the Planning and Zoning Commission members, yes, that's
Okay.
an item that was identified first and ultimately focus of much of the discussion before the matter was postponed.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think they're beautiful, but we can plant Christmas trees around them if that makes it right.
Oh, boy.
Any other questions or comments? All right, at this time, I'd like to offer the board the opportunity for final comments. Or I'm sorry, the Department of Planning? Nope. But this time, I'm going to offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the Department of Press. Ms. Coleman, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Earlier, I think it was said that the solar panels on the roof only provided 50% of the energy. Was that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
would the homeowner not be happy with just that amount?
Well,
I mean, if that's-
when we designed a system, we designed it around what the homeowner requests. He requested 100% offset. So he wanted to be as self-sufficient as possible. And this system will allow him to do that. So
Right.
that's what we designed. 50% was not what he asked for.
I'm just wondering if that is really a hardship to not get 100%, but have to settle for 50%.
Correct. And I understand that. We get that question frequently. Basically, when he purchased this system, he no longer has an electric bill. He is literally only charged for a meter. And that the cost of that system versus the cost of electricity over 20 to 25 years, there's significant dollars there.
Well, and also, I guess it also depends if his home is heated and air conditioned, heated by electric or gas. I don't know.
He's 100% electric home.
Well, I'm 100% electric at my house too. And quite honestly, the bills have not been very bad. I think 50% sounds very nice. But that's not what he wants to consider.
That's correct.
he considers that a hardship to not have 100%.
For him, it's more of a financial situation as far as what he's going to pay in power over 20, 25 years versus the cost of the system itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Utility rates continue to rise where your solar stays the same, so.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, I think, you know, this is where we kind of scratch our heads here a little bit. I think it's a good thing for people to move to, you know, non-fossil fuel based energy, you know, so solar's a good answer, wind, and, you know, other things that maybe will help. And I guess what I always think about on these kind of situations is, you know, what is the problem? You know, where's the concern? And if the concern is primarily visibility from the road, I get that, because they're not the pretty, they're not as pretty as a Christmas tree. Okay. So,
Correct.
yeah. So if there's a way to mitigate that and to basically hide the solar array, it seems like that would be, you know, maybe a reasonable approach to allow, you know, this homeowner to have the energy production that they would desire without really being an issue for any of the surrounding neighbors or anyone who even drives by, for that matter.
Correct. And being good friends with Randy, I know he told me about a week ago, 3 or 4 neighbors, immediate neighbors around him, asked about the sign in the front yard about the town hall meeting, and they were more than willing to back him up because they support green energy as well. From your point of view, I understand the cosmetics. I'm all about making that right. Brian and I work together every day. And at the end of the day, we're probably going to do another install in the city of Wildwood. Will we do it this way again? Nope. But we want to do it right the next time, and we want to make it right this time. So.
All right, any more questions or comments? Okay, at this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. See no request for that. Does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, the department just has the one comment. In the recommendation report prepared by the department, it is supportive of the roof-mounted system being retained in the setback off of Wild Horse Creek Road. A condition of that would be to change the framing from the silver color to black to match the panels. Conversely, the department does not support the ground-mounted panel system due to the impact it has on the viewscape from Wild Horse Creek Road. And the department is available for any comments or questions regarding its report and recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bunich. Does anybody on the board have any final comments?
Maybe just one last question, Joe. If they did develop a plan that would completely screen, I mean completely screen the ground mounted system, would the department feel differently about their support of the ground mounted system then?
Well, certainly screening the ground mounted solar panel system would go a long way to addressing the concerns about its view from Wild Horse Creek Road. What I would say is that the board granted the variance to the ground mounted solar panel system, then that variance would allow them to be retained in place. Then the matter goes back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the conditional use permit, which has to be granted as well. And between the board and the commission, I'm sure if the ground mounted panels stay, they will be screened and screened effectively.
I promise you that will happen. And I promise you Randy would be very happy about it. And I appreciate all of your concerns in working with us, and we just want to make it right and not let this happen again. I feel like a kindergarten kid that's made a mistake and now I ain't never going to do it again. So I guess at 55, you keep on learning. I guess that's how I look at it. So.
Well, it sounds like the issue is just simply that the only place to put a ground mounted system without whacking down a lot of trees is going to push you into the setback area. So, I mean, unless I'm missing something, I think that's kind of what the issue is. And I think for the board, we just have to decide whether we think it's okay to, to promote that ground, that solar system to the level that they would like to have it. It's a tough call.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sprunger, certainly the desire of the department and anyone that works for the city is to preserve our woodland areas, particularly if there's an alternative. So the department isn't discounting the preservation of the woodlands. But again, as Ms. Coleman noted, is it the responsibility of the Board of Adjustment or the Planning and Zoning Commission to ensure every homeowner that would like a solar energy system receives 100% of the energy that they need to basically live and manage their household? And I don't know the answer to that question. Again, from the department's perspective, the ground-mounted solar energy panels are certainly visible from the road, and that's the reason we have a permitting process, is to avoid situations like this.
Director of Units, so if we were to look at, similar to the previous case here, if we look at granting the variance with conditions, the roof seems to be pretty easy. We can easily say change colors. How would the second part look regarding what kind of screening? Obviously, we don't want to just say, as long as it's screened, because that could be one plant, or it could be 100 plants. Who would ultimately decide if the screening process is satisfactory to the city?
In this case, it would be the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of a site development plan.
I have really good relationships with Frisella Nursery, do a lot of work with them in partnership. So I could be more than happy to have a drawing I'll have them out there, walk them through it, show them what we're up against, and they'll do a total landscape drawing for submittal to y'all. If this goes through and you can make that happen, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Any other comments or questions? All right, at this time, I'm going to close the proceeding for a vote and ask for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to approve the solar plan with the roof mounted with the following conditions. The roof mounted system color must be approved by the Department of Planning and Zoning, and that the ground mounted system be approved, screening be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in the site development plan. I'm sorry that was kind of wordy, but I'm trying to catch what I thought I heard Joe say. Did I catch it right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
I would second that request with conditions.
All right, we have a first from Mr. Sprunger. Oh, Ms. Coleman?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what that second part is. Does that mean with landscaping you would approve it, or I don't know exactly what that meant?
Yeah,
Mr.
I'll take-
Mr. Bunich or Mr. Sprunger?
I'll take another shot at it. That we're basically approving the ground mount so long as the site development plan, which will include screening, is approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So the screening is only going to cover the base where, what the solar panels sit on. And is that what the whole issue is, just the base? Because the panels are gonna be up high and they'll be close to the road. That's not an issue?
No, the panels are only about 5 foot tall on the high side, and they go down to
Oh.
about a foot to the ground. So they're close to the ground. So like I said, just a surrounding vegetation that grew up to 5 or 6 foot high and maintain that
Okay.
elevation to hide that array.
I see. And is the department in favor of that, Mr. Bunich?
In terms of the ground mounted solar panels, the department is not supporting that.
Not even with the screening?
Again, the department is not supporting it regardless of screening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bunich.
All right. Mr. Sprunger, do you want to give your motion a stab again?
Okay, the motion to approve the variance with the following conditions. The roof-mounted solar panels color must be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the ground-mounted solar panels must be approved in the site development plan by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All
Which
right.
parenthetically is going to include a screening plan, so yeah.
All right, we have a first from Mr. Sprunger with conditions concerning the roof color and screening being acceptable to the city of Wildwood. Do we have a second?
I would continue to second that, please.
All right, we have a second from Mr. Frank. Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote? Uh-oh, where'd she go?
Well, Madam Chair, she's dropped off the screen. If we could wait a minute,
Sure.
hopefully she'll click the link again and we can bring her on back as a panelist. There she is.
I was out of it. I don't know if it's because of the rain, but everything froze. Now I'm back.
All right, did you hear the motion?
No, because my computer cut out and everything froze, and I just now got back.
All right, we have a motion pending and seconded to approve the variance request with the condition that the roof color is acceptable and the site planning is acceptable to the city of Wildwood. And we are awaiting your vote.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
I do approve the first part, but I feel like I have to deny the second part. So I can't do it that way, right?
No.
No, I guess deny.
Okay. And I will vote approve subject to those conditions. So the variance request has been approved subject to the conditions concerning the roof color and the site plan being approved by the city of Wildwood. Thank you.
We're good to go.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
God
Thank
love
you.
you. Thank you for your time.
All right. We ready for the next one?
Okay.
All right. Madam Chair and members of the board, our next case is BA 1421, Michael and Carrie Pulliam, 1015 Orville Wood Lane, Wildwood, Missouri 63005. They request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of installing a 40-foot by 11.5 foot in-ground swimming pool with associated concrete decking upon the property located at 1015 Orville Wood Lane, locator number 20V430051, Lot 2 of Orville Trace subdivision, within the side yard setback area at a distance of 12 feet in lieu of the 30-foot standard. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415-090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. And they are located in Ward 2.
And Madam Chair, with your permission, before Ms. Keefe provides a brief slide presentation, with your permission, the department would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony that is offered as part of tonight's public hearing, that testimony including any exhibits, plats, photographs, or other items. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair and members of the board, first, I would like to say that a new plan has been submitted to the department that is now requesting a 15 feet setback in lieu of the 30-foot standard. So that's going to 15 from 12. The property in question is located to the east of Highway 109. It's in a pretty rural area off of Orville Road, and you can access Orville Wood Lane over here. This is the subject parcel. It is bounded on two sides by Orville Wood Lane on that eastern side and the northern side. It is 3 acres in size, and it is located in Orville Trace subdivision. And here is the beginning of the subdivision. And this is a western facing from the road shot of the front of the residence. And this is a shot south towards the most impacted neighbor of the proposed improvement. And this is a picture to the north. And you can see Orville Wood Lane towards the back there and the northern neighbor. And this is a picture of the site plan. And you can note the road easement that bounds two sides of the property. Here is the residence. This is the proposed pool, and this is the proposed concrete decking. This red line is the building setback. It is 50 feet from the road easement on both sides here. And this is just a closer up of the proposed pool and paving. And this blue line represents the 15 feet. Oops. Sorry about that. This picture is to the north, but at the rear of the residence, to give you an idea of where the property starts to slope in the back. And this is another picture, again, facing west of the front, relatively flat portion of the lawn. And then here at the screened-in porch, looking to the southwest, as it starts to slope downwards, that is where the pool is going to go, and the concrete decking would be here. And then this gives you another picture. Here's the neighbor to the south. Here is a nice wooded buffer area, and then the pool would be going where I'm circling the mouse. And then that's another picture of where the pool would be put in. As you can see, the back of the property is densely wooded and it slopes downward pretty steeply. This shows the public support for the request. We do have 2 neighbors opposed, and the green circle represents the most impacted neighbor to the south who is in support. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. If there are no questions for the department from the board, can the petitioner please state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Yes, my name is Mike Pulliam, and I live at 1015 Orvillewood Lane, and I'm the homeowner.
All right, thank you. Could you please be sworn in by the court reporter?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, can you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of your property?
Sure. As Robin presented, when we built this home here, we tried to position the home to respect the fall of the land. We had challenges with meeting or building a home with the 50-foot setback. So as you saw on the image with the setback, our home is pretty much in the only spot it could go. And with the desire to put in a pool, the only place we could put it is on the side of our home. In the rear, we have the septic field and the steep slope, and of course, lots of trees. So with the pool running kind of north to south, we can get a typical pool length, 30 or 40 feet, and still stay away from the 50-foot setback from the road. Our other option would be to run the pool east to west, but then the pool would be much more in the front yard. So the idea of running north and south toward our southern property line, we could take advantage of the ground as it starts to slope down. And we're also not building a pool in the front yard. So that's essentially the nature of the hardship. It seems like a good use of the land, and given that our neighbor to the south, 250 feet away, we're not really, I think I understand the spirit of the setback rules, and we're not building on top of our neighbor essentially with the request.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pulliam. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to any board members who have questions.
Did I see that the homeowners association did approve a letter that was definitive, but I believe that they were in support? Is that correct?
They are not opposed to the variance, if I may. but they will not approve the pool until they have seen a more detailed site plan with landscaping and fencing and construction specifications.
All right, any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, are there any speakers in the audience who want to speak in favor of or opposition to the request?
Again, Madam Chair, if you'll just give a second or two. Anyone that is an attendee, if you'd like to speak on this particular matter, if you would please raise your hand, use the raise hand feature, or enter your request into the chat feature, and I'll be glad to promote you to a panelist. Madam Chair, there appears to be no one interested in speaking on this matter.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bunich. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. Seeing no request for that, does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, just as a overview, the Department of Planning is supportive of this variance request. In the findings of fact, we believe that the pool will have no or minimal impact on any of the adjoining properties. And that recommendation, though, is conditioned on the homeowners association approving the request for the pool as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bunich.
We're available for any questions, Ms. Keefe, Ms. Parker, or I at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bunich. Does the board have any final comments? Okay, at this time, I'd like to close the proceeding for a vote and ask for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
I will make the motion to approve the variance as requested with the condition that the HOA approves the overall site plan and installation.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. We have a motion to approve from Mr. Frank, subject to the condition that the HOA approves the final site plan. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Ms. Coleman, how do you vote? You're on mute.
Forgetting that. Approve.
Thank you. Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Approve.
I also vote to approve. Congratulations, your variance request has been approved, subject to the condition that the HOA approves the final site plan. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, board and Ms. Keefe.
Okay, are we ready for the next one?
We are. Madam Chair and members of the board, our next case is BA 1521 Monarch Fire Protection District, 18304 Wild Horse Creek Road, Wildwood, Missouri 63005. And this project is represented by Jared Joggers from FGM Architects at 1 Metropolitan Square, Suite 1945, St. Louis, Missouri 63102. They request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general and the sign regulations general for the purpose of constructing a new fire station and accompanying monument sign upon the property located at 18304 Wild Horse Creek Road, locator number 19W510215, lot part A, Geist Acre subdivision within the front yard setback area of the subject lot as follows. The fire station would be at a distance of 35 feet in lieu of the required 50 feet. The monument sign would be at a distance of 6.6 feet in lieu of the required 50 feet. And the parking spaces would be at a distance of 35 feet in lieu of the required 50 feet. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations and the requirements of Chapter 415-400 sign regulations general of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance, and this is in Ward 1.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before having Ms. Keefe provide a slide presentation with your permission, the department would like to enter into the record regarding this request the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And finally, any testimony provided as part of tonight's public hearing on this request, and that testimony could include any photos, exhibits, maps, or other items provided as part of tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. My apologies. Moving into our presentation now, you are looking at the map, the overall map of the area. And you can see the subject parcel here, and it is just to the south of Wild Horse Creek Road and to the east of Highway 109. And then Etherton Road is to the east. The subject parcel is in our non-urban residence district. It is 3 acres. At about the upper third to the south of the lot, we start to have a bit of a slope, and then it's densely wooded in the rear third of the lot. Wild Horse Creek Road is a fairly high traffic or high volume road, and it is maintained by the state. And then Etherton Road is more of a rural road maintained by the City of Wildwood. And this is a view to the east. And this is Wild Horse Creek Road, and you can see the sign for Etherton there. And this is a view to the south of the lot. Another view of the south, just moving forward. Okay, and then we move to the site plan for the proposed fire station. And what we're looking to do is move the entire building up 15 feet, including the parking, and then also the signage, which would put it at 6.6 from the property line. Looking at the lot, again, it is pretty densely wooded towards the rear, to the south of the property, and then it slopes downward from about that upper third. I added this sign rendering into this presentation this evening because we did have a bit of an unusual situation associated with this application, in that last year the Planning and Zoning Commission approved some modifications to our sign regulations, and part of those modifications included a stipulation that any sign that goes before the Board of Adjustment must also go before the Architectural Review Board for comments, suggestions, or recommendations. These are non-binding, but you should have a memo with your materials today. This is a view to the north to give you a perspective of what is across the street. You can see some older structures here that have fairly close setbacks to the road. And then this is a view from the west to the east. And then this is from the far eastern side of the lot near Etherton Road, looking out to the west. And this summarizes our public support for the request. We had 2 opposed and then 2 in support of the request. And that ends my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. If there are no questions for the Department of Planning, I'd like to call the petitioner forward and ask that you state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter.
Yeah, my name's Jared Joggers with FGM Architects. Our address is 1 Metropolitan Square, Suite 1945, St. Louis, Missouri. I'm the project manager on this project for the new firehouse for the district.
Okay.
All right.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Could you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of the property?
Yeah, I would like to start. Can I also have Josh Mandel, the principal architect, be admitted into this as well? Because he would like to talk about the project as well, if that'd be okay.
Is he on here, Joe, or no? Yeah. Oh, there you are. Can you go ahead and state your name and address and be sworn in by the court reporter as well?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Josh Mandel with FGM Architects, 1 Metropolitan Square, Suite 1945, St. Louis, Missouri, 63102.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right. Can you go ahead and whichever one of you wants to go first, explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of the property?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and start off. So the request is, as described, is we've designed the building on this site currently at the 50-foot setback, and we would like to move the building 15 feet closer to the north, closer to Wildhorse Creek Road for a number of reasons. I guess the first reason is the nature of this site and the topography. It slopes pretty heavily from the very front, from Wildhorse Creek Road to the very south property line. So by shifting the building just 15 feet, we're going to help offset some of the damage to the native landscape, the trees there. So we feel that that's definitely a win for not only the district, but also for the neighbor next door that's to the south, because it's going to place the building further away from their property. Also, I don't know if we call this a hardship, but there's also just a significant savings in the amount of fill we have to bring to the site, and the scope of a retaining wall, which is behind the building to retain the building pad and the fill of the site. So that will help offset the cost of that work, but also it would also help offset and mitigate some construction traffic during construction. The amount of truck traffic will be lessened by being able to move the building up closer to Wildhorse Creek Road. I think like I said, we've been working on the design for some time, so we had this set for a while, but it became apparent that this would be a benefit, not only to the district, but to the surrounding neighbors as well. We're still maintaining like what we call the front apron in front of the apparatus bay. From the street to the apparatus bay doors, it's still 63 feet. So we still have plenty of room for the trucks to be off the roadway and have plenty of room to get on and off the Waters Creek Road. So that's just a point I'd like to let everybody know. But our idea is to pick up the building and the parking and everything and shift it to the north. So the whole development, if you will shift to the north. So, Josh, I don't know if you have any other comments you would like to add to that.
I would like to reinforce two items. As Jared mentioned, by moving the building closer to the road, one of the important additional benefits is that we get further from the neighbor to the south. Throughout the design process, the district and our team really tried to listen to the comments made and the interests of the neighbors. There is a particular neighbor that's quite close, the property immediately south of the subject property where the fire station will be built. And the idea of moving the firehouse closer to Wild Horse Creek saves cost of construction, decreases impervious pavement, increases the amount of tree canopy that can be preserved, but also increases the distance by an additional 15 feet, but also reduces the height of the retaining wall in the process, which means that we'll be further from the neighbor, but also have less retaining wall that will be visible to them, less material. So we feel like all of these items together represent a significant positive, but the hardship is essentially the imposition of the site, or imposition on the site can be reduced by virtue of moving closer to the roadway.
All right, thank you. If any board members have any questions for the petitioners, go ahead.
Yeah, have you all done any kind of research or studies, maybe a traffic study or whatever, to see how your equipment would get on and off the road and how it could move around and so forth? Have you done that yet? Or have you considered that?
We have done so, and I have a graphic that I can share with this group if appropriate. It's been submitted during the course of planning and zoning review, but there is essentially a multi-page series of diagrams that were created that show how we took the least common denominator, which is a large fire apparatus with a long wheelbase, 45-foot vehicle, and demonstrated how turning in from westbound Wild Horse Creek and turning in from eastbound Wild Horse Creek and turning out onto westbound and eastbound Wild Horse Creek would work. I will, if we can show that, that would be fantastic. If not, we can both resubmit that and kind of refer to that as being in the city's file that Joe referred to. But yes, sir, we have analyzed that. The one asterisk I will put on this is to say that we analyzed that for the 50-foot setback line by moving the building and the development essentially 15 foot closer. We feel like there's a zero difference, but we truthfully have not generated those same diagrams for the 35-foot setback, but we would be able to if so desired.
Okay. And is that what is commonly considered as a traffic study?
I would not refer to that as a traffic study. It is obviously studying a vehicle movement on the site, but it's basically studying the apparatus kind of footprint or apparatus movement. I won't argue if we want to refer to that as a traffic study, but I would say we're basically demonstrating that the largest vehicle that the district would ever either temporarily or permanently operate out of this facility can safely move off of Wild Horse Creek and back onto it. And move through the site. It basically shows the footprint of the wheels and demonstrates as the vehicle turns and so forth.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Mandel has the capability to share screen if you would like to see the diagram with the building at the 50-foot setback.
Sure.
Okay, can you all see a black and white diagram with the shaded proposed new footprint of building with red text in the upper left-hand corner stating ladder truck entering from, or I'm sorry, ladder truck entering and exiting from the east?
Yes.
So this diagram represents, as Joe just confirmed, the original respecting of the 50-foot setback and the design of the site as is subject to the conditional use permit approved by planning and zoning and by the city, demonstrating a large fire apparatus headed westbound on Wild Horse Creek, turning left and moving through the site. I'm not 100% sure that you're familiar with the design, but essentially there's an ingress lane that drives southward and would allow a fire truck to loop around the building, if you follow my cursor, and then pull through the apparatus bay and orient itself out towards Wild Horse Creek for egress when receiving a call for service. This movement continues then northward on the apparatus ramp and demonstrates how that long wheelbase vehicle would then turn eastbound onto Wild Horse Creek Road. The next page is the same building footprint, but shows a fire truck driving eastbound on Wild Horse Creek, turning right into the station, so into that ingress drive. Again, you don't see it here, but the previous diagram demonstrates the looping movement of the apparatus around the building into the apparatus bay, and then upon pulling through to make a right or head eastbound on Wild Horse Creek, and then I'll skip to the third page or turn left westbound on Wild Horse Creek. Our position, obviously it's not drawn at this point, is that by virtue of moving the building 15 foot northward, we wouldn't change any of the way that these movements occur. There would be 15 foot less of southward travel as the fire trucks drive around from the straight position or straight orientation, and then 15 foot shorter egress ramp. And then one other comment, now that we're looking at this plan, we have taken into account the possibility that MoDOT may widen Wild Horse Creek Road in the future. From conversations with their district engineer and then the reviewing engineer for our project, we've been told that they have currently, nor in the foreseeable future, any plans to widen the road, but we felt that it was prudent, as did the fire district, to at least plan for the possibility of that road being widened. So we account for potentially 2 additional lanes and increase in width of the shoulders. So to be clear, we feel like we've anticipated a potential what if that would allow this plan to survive more than the projected 50-year lifespan of the building and the site development. So I'll quit talking, but this is sort of getting at what the question I think asked about. And if desired, we could generate these same sort of diagrams to demonstrate building closer, 15 foot, same movement in and out without any conflict.
So the ingress and egress paths where there's the radius is that, okay, yeah, hold on a second. So the actual driveways or whatever, where the radius is that like concrete or is that asphalt or what is that?
That would be any place where the fire truck would drive would be concrete because it really requires a heavy duty concrete to be long lasting. This vehicle parking area that would be staff vehicles and visitors really either would be thinner concrete or could even go to asphalt, but the plan right now is all concrete, and it'd be heavy duty concrete where the fire truck will drive and loop through, both on the ingress side and on the egress side.
Yeah, and it's probably not really our job, but you know, your diagram shows that they're driving literally right on the edge of the you know, on the egress side of it. You know, I don't know if that's an issue or not, but it looks like it barely is able to make that turn.
You're talking about kind of right at this intersection?
Yeah.
Fair criticism. I think that I guess one defense I would offer is that these diagrams were developed in probably March, April timeframe, and I imagine that that's been refined a little bit. Jared, I don't know if you can speak to the kind of the current designed for those kind of throats of the apron where the egress is. But yeah, our charge by the district is to make sure that we have a viable pathway for the fire trucks. If that is not provided, then we've really failed. So we, without a doubt, have every requirement to get this right, so they do not run up over their curb or impact their landscaping, and obviously, or worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a concern of the city too, is that you can safely get in and out of your spot. And so that's why I asked the question, because we all want safety, for the trucks to be able to get in and out. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing unless there's desire to still look at any of these, but I don't mind sharing them further if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. Are there any other questions from the board for the petitioners? All right. Are there any speakers in the audience? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mary.
This woman.
Are you gentlemen aware of the department's recommendation for a true traffic study? I wasn't sure if you guys have been. Can you guys speak a little on that, or where we are with that?
Yes, sir. In the conditional use permit that was approved, and I believe it was the 5th or 6th of May, early in the month of May, there was a conditional use permit granted by the city, and it had several conditions listed. One of those conditions was to have a traffic study performed. We, on behalf of the district, undertook to request a proposal from a PTOE, Professional Traffic Operating Engineer. It's a tongue twister. PTOE has proposed as of the month of June, and we have essentially a traffic study designed, if you will. So they'll design the experiment and say, here's what we're going to count, here's how we're going to count it. One of the other stipulations within that conditional use permit by the city was that we analyzed data from 2018 gathered by a consultant on behalf of Missouri Department of Transportation. That MoDOT data was received on 10 July. Now we are able to begin that traffic study based on having received that traffic data from MoDOT. Both the charge of the city and the benefit of using that MoDOT data is that due to COVID and due to school being out of session right now, we don't necessarily believe that the data we would take now would be as valuable as data that was prior to COVID and certainly during a school in session time period. So with the MoDOT data in hand, we now have direction to move forward with that traffic study and anticipate that taking several weeks to pull together. And then we'll be providing that to our client and to the city directly.
Do you imagine if we were to grant the variance subject to that study being favorable, do you anticipate any issue with that, or would you guys be on board with that?
I don't take issue with that. I will say that our expectation, and I don't mind saying this because we're not performing the traffic study, so there's no bias here. Our expectation is the traffic study will essentially show that there's a negligible amount of traffic, because what I assume you all are cognizant of is that house number 2, existing Monarch Firehouse number 2, is at 18424 Wild Horse Creek, just west of the intersection of 109 at Wild Horse Creek. So currently there are, and I think this data was provided, but there's roughly 500, or there were in 2019, roughly 500 round trips by the fire apparatus. That is presumably going to be the same.
Madam Chair, it appears Mr. Mandel's froze. He's coming.
Josh, if you can hear us, you may need to re-log in or do something.
Mr. Sprunger, I think you got your message.
Because one thing that I am a little curious about is just, I mean, I go up and down Wild Horse Creek Road a fair amount, and if they have to turn west on Wild Horse Creek Road at say 4:45 or 4:30 or 5 o'clock on a weekday, I don't know how that's going to work. Because it's pretty much always lined up all the way back. So maybe it's not our issue here, but
Right.
I don't know how in the world they do that, but.
Well, certainly, Mr. Sprunger, a traffic study will take into account a number of items, both relative to the addition of traffic from the new fire station, the turning movements into and out of the fire station, and then also understanding how circulation functions beyond the fire station itself.
Right.
So everyone, I got word from Josh that his internet is down. So I can, oh, here he is. Back with us?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that may be the universe telling me to make it a shorter story. I think we would be very happy to accept conditional upon the traffic study being completed, and to call it a favorable completion of traffic study is fine. I think we don't feel like we're going to see a whole lot of movement ultimately, but we will let the traffic study speak for itself.
Great, thank you with that.
All right, are there any other questions from any board members for the petitioners?
Just to be clear, where you plan to put the sign, you're absolutely sure there's not going to be visibility problems, probably from cars coming off of Etherton turning on the Wild Horse. You guys are absolutely positive you're not going to have a problem there.
Short answer, yes. We, in our last week conversation with ARB, and we haven't been able to follow up with these items prior to tonight, but there were requests essentially to demonstrate that we would not create a visual obstruction, essentially to vehicles from Etherton, whether turning left or right, but looking to the west. And we are absolutely confident, to answer your question, that we will not create an obstruction, but we were going to demonstrate that with some graphics. We just have not had a chance to generate those essentially before tonight. But that sign, I think there was a dimension given of 6.6 feet from the property line to the north edge of the sign as proposed. That is actually, I think, roughly 18 feet from the south edge of the travel lane. And that is sort of at a, I don't know if I'd call it convex or concave, but essentially a southern bend in Wild Horse Creek. So we don't feel like there's going to be any visual obstruction to a driver looking west, but we will aim to submit some documentation of that.
Yeah, you'll confirm that. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions for the petitioners from the board? All right, at this time, I'd like to open the floor to any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor of or opposition to the request. Excuse me.
Madam Chair, just for a moment, if there are any attendees or in this case a panelist that would like to speak in favor or opposition, if you would use the raise hand feature, or please note such in the chat and the department will be glad to promote you. Madam Chair, I see no raised hand or there's nothing in chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bunich. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. See no requests for that. Does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, the Department of Planning is recommending the Board of Adjustment consider these requests favorably. These requests being the shift of the building, certain parking spaces in association with the building, and the sign closer to Wild Horse Creek Road, or into the front yard setback. The practical difficulty relating to a fire station is that fire apparatus generally does not back well or do things well in reverse. And so the depth of the access into and out of the site is reflective of the fire apparatus pulling through and always going forward. So that U-shaped drive is critical to successful ingress and egress and safety for all involved. That causes the depth of the site, the disturbance area, to increase in terms of length. By shifting the building and other improvements closer to Wild Horse Creek Road, a lot of positives occur to address that practical difficulty. The petitioner's representatives noted a reduction in the retaining wall, less impervious surface, as well as a ample circulation pattern still remaining. Given those conditions, the department believes the variance is appropriate. However, to ensure as we move the building forward that everything works well on the site, the frontage on Wild Horse Creek Road in association with the site and beyond, the department is asking that if the board were to act favorably, a traffic study, a new traffic study generated based upon this particular site design, be a condition of such. Madam Chair and members of the board, the department's available for any comments or questions regarding its recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bunich. Does anybody on the board, do any board members have any final comments? Yes, Ms. Coleman?
I was just going to ask, with that traffic study, I think they brought up a really good point. The traffic is definitely different in the summer than it is during the school year. So when would they do that traffic study?
Well, Ms. Coleman, as Mr. Mandel mentioned, they're going to use data that was collected in 2018 by the Missouri Department of Transportation. The professional transportation operating engineer will also use, from what I would call, formulas to anticipate any increased utilization of the roadway since that time period. But again, as Mr. Mandel mentioned, 2019 and 2020 was the pandemic,
right,
and the traffic volumes dropped. And if we were to try to do it now, school is not in session. So collectively, our PTOE, Rick Brown, our Director of Public Works, who does traffic, used to do traffic studies, will be able to ensure that we get an accurate count.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? All right, at this time, I'd like to close the proceeding for a vote. Can I get a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
I'll make a motion to approve with the following conditions. One, that the traffic study is conducted with a favorable outcome. And I think I want another condition to ensure that the site, that the sign is not going to obstruct the site from Etherton Road. That would be the other condition I would like.
All right, we have a motion to approve with the conditions that there is a traffic study conducted that results in a favorable outcome, and that the site planning can show that any monument signs do not obstruct the view from Etherton Road, from Mr. Sprunger. Do we have a second?
I will second that with all those conditions.
All right, we have a second from Ms. Coleman. Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank, how do you vote? You're on mute.
I think I'd get this by now. Yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Springer, how do you vote?
Yes, with conditions.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
Yes, with the
And I will-
conditions.
I will also vote yes. The variance has been approved, subject to those two conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank the members of the board. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Final case, or do we need a break? Keep going, wrap it up.
All right, Madam Chair and members of the board, our final case tonight is BA 1621, Michael and Cynthia Payne, 2124 Saddle Creek Ridge Road, and I'd like to correct that for the record. It is actually Ridge Court, Wildwood, Missouri 63005. They request an exception to the Natural Resource Protection Standards for the purpose of installing an in-ground swimming pool with associated concrete decking upon property located at 2124 Saddle Creek Ridge Court. Locator number 20U530271, lot 14 of Wills Trace subdivision, requiring relocation of a portion of the natural resource protection line to the location of the 30-foot setback line at the rear of the residence. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 420-200 Natural Resource Protection Standards and Procedures of the City of Wildwood Subdivision and Development Regulations and Planned Residential Development Overlay District, PRD number 842, which was approved by Wildwood City Council in 2003. This particular request does not offer an exchange of protected, non-protected area, given the minimal area affected by the requested modification. And this is in Ward 2.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, with your permission, the Department of Planning would like to enter into the record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this request and all contents contained there in that file, which includes the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony provided as part of tonight's hearing. That testimony can include any exhibits, plats, photographs, or other items offered as evidence. Madam Chair, with your permission, I believe Ms. Keefe can share a screen and show a brief slide presentation regarding this site.
Please, thank you.
Okay. And everyone can hear me, right? This is an overview of the area. We're in the northeastern portion of Wildwood. We've got Clarkson Valley over here to the east of this purple line. To the south is Valley Road and Strucker. And you can see Kears Mill over here. This is the subject parcel. It is 2.3 acres in size, and the owner of this property also owns this one to the west. This is a view of the residence from, let's see, the north, yes, north going south. And this is a view to the west and a view to the east. Here is the survey of the property. And this green line represents the natural resource protection line. And this red line represents the 25-foot setback from the natural resource protection line. And it should be noted that while a building foundation cannot go past this setback, accessory structures such as pools and decking can. This red portion is what is being proposed to be adjusted to meet with this 30-foot setback line back here, and that would just be behind the structure, the main residence. This is a view to the south, but looking to the west. And here we are in the rear of the property, facing the back of the house to the north east. And here we have a view to the south of the property. And you can see that it is a very densely wooded area past that fence. That's from the back patio. And this is a view looking southeast. And this is a view looking to the northeast. And going back to the property, and I think I forgot to mention, but actually I'm just going to scroll back up to the site plan and just note that this entire southern portion of the lot is densely wooded and also slopes pretty significantly. Okay. And here we can see previous variances in the area relating to the natural resource protection area. There have actually been 5 variances that have been approved, 2 for the same property. 1 was denied, and it was also relating to a pool, but this denial was preceding all of the approvals, and there was approval also relating to a pool since then. So it seems that we've been changing our position there. And thank you, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. If there are no questions from the board for the department, at this time, can the petitioner please state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Michael Payne. I and my wife own 2124 Saddle Creek Ridge Court, which is the subject of the variance request.
Okay, be sworn in by the court reporter, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Can you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance as it relates to the character of your property?
Yes, ma'am. What that survey does not show is that in 2006, early 2007, we added a sunroom onto the back of the home. We had all proper permits and zoning approvals. That takes the land out a little bit, and that area in back of it that is more flat is where a pool would go. And we feel we need the added space in order to construct a nice sized pool along with concrete decking. Our house is on the market. We're trying to sell it, and everybody who has looked at it, they want a swimming pool. And we have gotten feedback from the real estate agents that the people who want to purchase it, they've been back a couple of times, don't feel that there's enough room. So I wanted to go ahead with the variance request. And if they don't buy it, then, and we're having trouble selling because we don't have a pool, in all likelihood, I'm going to end up having to put a pool in myself. And we just feel that we have so much wooded area and so much natural resource protection area. We feel that it's a minimum amount, and we would like to have the variance approved. Our land to the right and back slopes downwards, and we've got a sewer grinder pump system that every home in the subdivision has. So it's really kind of hard to try and build anything down in there. And we're not asking for any adjustments to any of the building lines or setbacks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Payne. Are there any questions from the board for the petitioner? All right. Are there any speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor of or opposition to the request?
Madam Chair, there are no attendees, so if there's
All right.
none of the panelists with questions.
That makes that
Thank you.
easy. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report if there are any requests. Seeing no request, does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, and thank you. Madam Chair and members of the board, the Department of Planning is supporting this request. The support is based upon the minimal nature of the additional disturbance on a site that, as you can see from the information provided by Ms. Keefe and the petitioner, has an extensive amount of resource protection associated with it. That extent of resource protection is greater than many of the other lots associated with the Rules Trace subdivision. Therefore, we are recommending approval, and Ms. Keefe, Ms. Parker, and I are available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Do any board members have any final comments? Yes, Ms. Coleman? You're on mute.
Oh, my question is, so the sole hardship of this not being able to put a pool in is to sell the home? Is that the correct understanding I'm getting?
It's that I'm having a hard time selling my home because of the fact that it does not have a pool, and people who want to put a pool in do not feel that they have enough room in that one area in back, which is about the only place you could put a pool on a flat area. And to the extent that the people who keep coming back don't buy the house, then I probably will have to go out and put a pool in myself in order down the road to sell it. It's becoming a real hardship. We've looked at all the other homes around this area that have sold quickly and have sold above the list price. I was shocked that we're not getting any people coming in. And the reason we're being told is because it doesn't have a pool, and the people who want to put a pool in don't feel, just looking out over the area, that they have the space for it.
Yes, I can understand that because they really don't have the space for it. I don't know if that would offset the price of selling. Anyway, thank you for the answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments from the board? All right, at this time, I'd like to close the proceeding for a vote, and I'll ask for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions.
I will, I'd like to motion to approve with the condition that it's, the changes are updated with St. Louis County, the deeds office there.
Absolutely. I'll get that done.
All right, we have a motion to approve with the condition that it's properly documented with the recorder of deeds. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Springer. We have a second from Mr. Springer. Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank, how do you vote? You're on mute.
Been a long night. Yes.
Mr. Springer, how do you vote?
Yes, with conditions.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
I guess approve with the conditions.
And I also vote to approve with the conditions. Your variance request has been approved, subject to the condition that it is properly documented with a deed that's recorded.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and board members.
Thank you.
Are we done?
I hope so.
Yes. All All right. I guess on that note, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you
Good night,
next
all.
month. Good night.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate your service as always.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bennett.
Thank you for your help navigating through all this stuff.
You're welcome.